Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast. We have an amazing guest for you today. He's an industry thought leader. He specializes in executive strategy and business operations. He's a tech visionary. And more importantly than all of that, he's just an all-around great guy. Please help me welcome Brian Abbott, COO of Optifunder. Brian, welcome to the show.
Wow. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for that introduction. And I certainly appreciate the invitation to join you guys today. So thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
It is great to have you. You have a wealth of industry knowledge and expertise. We've known each other for a number of years in the industry. For our listeners who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how did you get into financial services?
So I guess probably my story is not too unlike most of the folks in this, and certainly in the mortgage industry. I know very few people who started out saying, I'm going to be, I want my career to be in the mortgage industry. I actually started out headed down the politics road. I was a political science major, thinking I was heading off to Washington and later law school. And like so many of us, stumbled into the mortgage business, a little over 20 years ago. This is just no other place I'd rather be. The industry is just full of just phenomenal people. But yeah, so, started out on the lending side, on the mortgage side itself, spent, the first, I like to say the first half of my career, in the business, and then the second half of my career working on the business. So ran strategy and operations, and worked took a tour of the business for a couple lenders here in Atlanta, and then a couple, on a national level. And at every step of the way, just somehow became, more and more enthralled with process and strategy. And, why does it take somebody 3 clicks and 4 minutes to do something, and, multiply that over, hundreds and hundreds of loans in your pipeline. So became more and more interested in process, in technology. And then, as so many folks did in the 08-09, crash, I made the leap over to the technology side, and spent about the last 10 years, 7 or 8, 9 years, I think, working on from originations on the LOS technology, and joined Optifunder in the summer of 2019. The product for Optifunder had been in development for a number of years, and it reached the stage where we were bringing the product, or they were bringing the product to market, and wanted to build a business around the product. So I joined them in 2019, and it's been a fun ride ever since.
Outstanding. Well, like I said, you have a wealth of knowledge here. So let's start talking a little bit about business ops, some of the technology. During the last few years, there's been a big industry push to digitize more of the lending process. Where do you think we are in that whole process, and what are some of the biggest impediments?
Sure. So I think you're right. I mean, all of us, ever since, that day where we heard click button, get mortgage, right? It's, but I think, one of the things that the industry has been focused on, or primarily has been focused on, bringing digital mortgage, if you will, to the front end of our business. That's the origination space. That's the client facing space. And at every step of the way, I find that there are more and more opportunities to bring digital mortgage and that true, automation experience to the back office. And so that's what we've tried to do here with Optifunder. We're bringing, automation and experience to those folks who are at the very tail end of the origination process.
So what are some of those steps in that back end process? I mean, like you said, we all talk about the POSs have been the wonderful shiny object. Everyone's looked at those, improved borrower experience. But if it still takes you 40, 60, 90 days to close a loan, if it's still a terrible experience, once you get all that information in on the front end, it's still a bad experience. It's still not digitized. It's still not really, transforming the digital back end like we talked about. So what are some of those things that lenders really struggle with on the back end?
Well, that's a good question. I think the thing that amazes me at every client, at every prospect that we come across, is that is how manual the process still is today. So there are just so many things that lenders can do to embrace technology, to streamline their back offices. Again, in our particular case, we found that it was taking 15 to 20 minutes for a funder to fund a loan and request funds for their warehouse lenders and log into various portals and so on. And so, again, a lot of this is just kind of connecting systems, making sure the data sets are secure in the transmission of the data and the docs to, between systems. And so it's been a pretty amazing experience. And there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity. One of the things that I find about this industry that's so interesting is that all of us do the same thing, but all of us do it differently. So no lack of opportunity for improvement.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that improvement in a few minutes. What are some of the tech trends that you're seeing in the industry right now?
Well, again, from my viewpoint here, a lot of it is focused on, on bringing some of this, this digital mortgage, if you will, to the back office. And I know I keep repeating that, but if you look at where we are, we've come off a year and a half of just incredible volumes. Everybody is exhausted in this industry. They're tired, and those companies who are really starting to prepare and look ahead, if you look ahead of what they're predicting for the next year and a half or so, is that volumes will come back to normal, closer to standard or traditional volumes, and those lenders who are preparing for the future are those who are shoring up the bottom lines now, who are investing in technology to make sure that they can move into this new next business cycle in the right way. So,
well, and I think that's so critical. We talk about profitability, and profitability. So many times, people in the industry just think, "How many more loans can I get in the door?"
Right. Yeah.
And it's not just how many more loans, because as volumes start to contract, right? Mm-hmm. People have to look at, instead of, and Jonathan Kors used to say that, the former CEO of Ellie Mae used to say, in the mortgage industry, we have this incredible propensity to use human spackle.
Right.
All kinds of volumes, so let's throw more people at it. Oh, volumes are declining, let's get rid of people. And I think what we have to do is learn how to leverage technology to have much more sustainable lending models and profitability built in. I mean, the cost of a loan continues to rise. It's through the roof what you spend on producing the loan and all the back office steps that you're talking about, that I think now's the time to embrace technology to start. How can I streamline these processes? How can I make them much more digital and improve the process in the meantime, right?
It is, and you touched on something that's just a great point. And I build technology companies for a living, but the mortgage industry is so cyclical, and that's one of the things that we've always tried to solve with technology. When things are great, when the booms are happening, we throw a lot of people at the process. We hire. And then inevitably, the markets turn, the cycles turn, and as is traditional in our industry, we have to let some of those folks go. But I do believe that lenders who are really forward thinking, who are what I call tech forward mortgage lenders, have the ability to embrace technology to help them ride those highs and lows of our industry, so that they can get through all business cycles with a nominal amount of change in their organization.
I love that, nominal amount of change. And I think that's what a lot of lenders are really striving for. You just came back from San Diego. You're at the MBA Annual. It's great seeing you in person. Give me some impressions of MBA Annual. What were some of the discussions? What were some of the hot topics that people were talking about?
Yeah, well, first of all, I guess it was great to see you. It was great to see a lot of folks that we haven't seen in year and a half, almost 2 years. And I think that was the big takeaway for me is, probably a lot of us weren't quite sure what to expect. For me personally, it was my second trip in about a year and a half or so. My impressions of the conference itself, there's maybe not quite as many folks there that we were expecting, but I will tell you that every single meeting we had was just absolute quality. I think everybody there was truly interested in connecting with folks that they hadn't seen in years, who were truly, interested in exploring the new opportunities, the new partnerships. And frankly, it was more than just the meetings for me. For me, that's the folks that you bumped into on the sidewalks and the conversations that you had. And I'm pretty sure we'll end up forming a partnership based on a conversation I had in an elevator ride. So it all goes back to saying that, there's really no true substitute for face-to-face. That's for sure.
Well, you bring up so many good points, and I want to kind of chunk some of those down. I think the first one you brought up is there's been a lot of great digital events. I think there's a lot of wonderful digital tools out there that people need to keep leaning in and using those, but I haven't seen anyone able to replicate those networking opportunities, that ride up in the elevator, that bumping into somebody. I mean, that's the first time I saw you in San Diego was I was eating dinner out on the street with some friends and you came by and I'm like, okay, great. Brian's here. I'll have to connect with him. You can't replicate that in a digital environment, right?
For sure. Yeah.
To your other point, and I think this is what I found to be so satisfying from MBA Annual, was that the conversations, in my opinion, were much more genuine and authentic.
Agree. Yeah.
The people that were there wanted to be there. It wasn't rushing from one meeting to the next like you were speed dating. It was, hey, Brian, how's your family doing? What's new? And then you talked and you really dove into what was going on with your business. How could you help? Where could you eliminate a friction point? That I thought that was awfully powerful to have those in-depth discussions. Like you said, you're going to get business off of riding up in the elevator, which you never could have in a digital world.
For sure. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I kind of thought it was me being, crossing over to the old man side of the attendees where, we decided not to book up the 35 half-hour meetings in 2 days. But we did have, a couple dozen, good quality sit-downs. And I think every single, engagement we had, there's a legitimate takeaway. So can't agree with you more.
Yeah, and my meeting, none of them got canceled, postponed. Everyone showed up. They were happy to see you. I thought it was a great conference. Like you said, maybe not the volumes of some years past, but to be honest, I would rather have this experience where people truly wanted to be there and have those meaningful conversations than just to say, let's add 2,000 or 4,000 more people.
For sure, yeah.
The other thing that I had found that's interesting as we're kind of talking this hybrid of digital and personal, I have found that when I leaned in and made connections with people during COVID and used digital, whether it was LinkedIn or video or an email or a phone call or a DM or whatever it was, those conversations were significantly more meaningful, like I was meeting with a long lost friend when I finally saw him in person.
Right. Right. I mean, we've all spent the last, almost 2 years, a year and a half on Zooms and GoToMeetings and we personally here have, employees scattered all over the country, 16, 17 different states. And yet it feels like we're all in the same room. So when you actually do meet some of these folks who maybe you've never actually met before in person, but when you finally get to sit down and shake their hands, it feels like you've been, known them for years. So,
I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad you brought that up because there was a number of people I got to meet with this year for the first time in person. But it was like a long lost friend where over the last year and a half, 2 years, we've developed a friendship through the different digital mediums and really have enhanced that relationship. And so when you see them live, like a long lost friend. I found it easier to get a hold of them because you could DM in social. You already had their text number. There's so many benefits to continue to lean into digital to enhance those live interactions. What are some of the things you see on the horizon for the mortgage industry? And at the end of 2021, we're almost into November. It's hard to believe. We've only got 2 months left, really 2.5 months left. What do you think's in store for 2022?
Well, I think hopefully we'll see volumes continue to remain strong. I mean, obviously no one's going to be able to maintain what we did over the last year and a half or so. But as we settle back down, I think, it sounds like there's great projections for purchase market. Refis obviously will drop off quite a little bit. But again, I think it goes back to those folks, those mortgage lenders who are in this for the long run, who are really looking out over the horizon. What we see for the conversation we're having is that now is the time to prepare. Now is the time to put those technology pieces, the fintechs, if you will, get your technology stack in order to help you, prepare for 2022 and beyond. So.
What are some of the hurdles that we have to overcome for user adoption, for getting lenders to not only embrace the technology, but then really start seeing the ROI because they get user adoption among the ranks and get people actually really embracing these new technologies?
So, one of the things that's interesting, it's a great question. And one of the things that we see, for example, particularly here at Optifunder, is our sale or the interested parties, usually the folks that are making the buying decisions, are at the executive level. That's the CFO, the capital markets, and so, but the folks that are using the technology are, out in the operations, out in the field. And so to be able to deploy technology platforms and strategies that carry through the entire organization, that is certainly something that we're seeing helps with user adoption, helps with folks just embracing the new platforms. And the other piece I'd say is that there's always been this idea that technology can somehow replace people. I see technology as a tool to help people do their jobs, and perhaps let them free them up to focus on things that are more important and more revenue producing. But I don't think that we'll ever see technology truly replace, the human aspect of our business, for sure.
So many good points there. And I think your point about, use technology, leverage it so that people can do their job better, so that they can focus on whether it's streamlining the process, reducing friction points, or wouldn't it be great if we just fostered better relationships and quit worrying about it just being one transaction to the next transaction to the next transaction, and we actually developed and enhanced a relationship with the borrower, with our partners that we're working with in the industry. I hope that comes true. Brian, you and I can continue to go on and talk for hours on tech. It was so nice to run into you in San Diego. If people want to find out more about Optifunder and what you guys are doing and some of the cool things that you guys are doing to eliminate steps on the back end, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Sure. So reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I guess, Michael, I don't know if we'll post my contact information. Certainly reach out by my email or phone. But again, we thank you for having me. The thesis behind Optifunder was that we thought there was a better way to create a funding transaction and bring the terms of your warehouse lines online, marry them to the pipeline data that's in your LOS, and produce a solution that lowers the cost of capital for independent mortgage bankers. So certainly excited to talk to anybody who would like to take a peek, and we'll go from there.
Outstanding. Brian, it was great connecting with you, not only seeing you in San Diego, but I'm glad we could have this discussion. You are welcome back anytime. Thank you so much for being a guest on this episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast.
Thanks, Michael.